do yourself a favour, check out the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club, and don't forget not just to rate it, but also to subscribe on YouTube or Facebook.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's me back with another Carlisle Cult Cinema Club Presents. And on this episode, we have another returnee, and it is the brilliant, fantastic, the artistically gifted Bryan Hitch. You'll know him from Marvel, DC, but this time his Ghost Machine work. But this time, we're talking about some of the movie stuff he's done. Because we did kind of tap on it last time, but I thought we'd go deeper into it. So let's kick off with what movies first inspired a young Bryan Hitch?
Well, I always go back to the 70s for that one. It's Superman the movie, because I mean, I was into comics. I loved comics. So, Maybelline's only sold DC comics, so I was always just spending all my pocket money and any money I could scrounge from my parents. It was next door to the cinema back then, the one that was on Botchergate.
That's right.
So, rather than buying sweets, if I went to the cinema, I'd just go next door afterwards and buy comics. Sometimes they were so good, I'd just sit on the wall next door between the two, and because the little wall, there's the green next door between.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd sit there and I'd read the comics before I even went home. But the thing is that as much as I loved superheroes and comics, and from about 9, 10 years old, that's all I ever wanted to do for a living was just draw comics. Superman the movie was kind of what embedded in me at that age, that I suppose what became known as that widescreen cinematic storytelling style I've kind of developed, and it wasn't on purpose. It was just that showed me how to treat the material with a level of verisimilitude, or which is the word that they always had printed up in the office, because Dick Donner wanted everything to have this appearance of reality and not be as, the idea is inherently ridiculous of, people that can fly and lift buildings and all that stuff. But the idea that you could treat it with a level of reality that made it believable for everybody. And their tagline, "You'll believe a man can fly." This whole thing was about believing in the reality of what you were seeing. I think that, and of course the cinematography on that stuff was just stunning. Hang on a minute, his name will come back to me because I was thinking about somebody else then, and I'm so old now I can never remember names. I have to remember this because actually, bizarrely enough, my mother-in-law used to go out with him when she was young.
All right.
Because she not as a date, she was dating somebody else who worked as a cinematographer at Pinewood, and they were friends. So she just dropped this one in the car when she was talking about this chap she used to go out with, and I said, it wasn't oh God, what is his name? You're gonna have to look it up for me, Paul, because my brain fog.
Who we're talking about?
Cinematographer on Superman the movie. See if you can get to it before it comes back into my head. And I should know this. I can't remember
on IMDb.
Everybody else can just talk amongst themselves while we're trying to figure this out.
Jeffrey Unsworth.
Jeffrey, yeah, right. So I remember, but we're in this car, we're in the car driving somewhere out for an evening, and Joe's mum just dropped this thing. She says, "Oh yeah, well, when I used to go out with this man who worked in films at Pine, his name was Jeff." I said, "Wait, what did he do?" So he did all the photography, did the camera work, stuff like that, all the lighting. I said, "Man, it wasn't Jeffrey Unsworth." She says, "No, it wasn't Jeffrey. We used to hang out with him because Jeff and Jeffrey were friends." So I said, "Wait a minute, you used to know Jeffrey Unsworth?" And she said, "Oh yeah, why?" I said, "Well, he was the cinematographer on Superman the movie." I mean, this, like, how small can the world be that I moved from Carlisle to Surrey, ended up marrying somebody who knew Jeffrey Unsworth because he went out with his friends. I mean, it's just bizarre, isn't it? Anyway.
I mean, he was cinematographer on 2001 as well.
Yeah.
Cabaret.
No, he's a legend. I just couldn't remember his name.
I mean, absolutely everything. Superman 2. Yeah.
But
Train robbery, Bridge Too Far.
Yeah, but think about this stuff and how widescreen that stuff looked. I mean,
Yeah,
Superman, from the Krypton scenes to the cornfields in Kansas, which they actually grew specially, that was just stuff the production bought, and they grew those fields so the corn was ready for those scenes. And just anyway, so just that level of how you compose a shot, and that nothing felt when I was drawing it right. If it was tall, it only felt right when I was composing in wide shots. And I
yeah,
think all of that I trace back to Superman the movie. Everybody else was a Star Wars fan, and I liked Star Wars, but for me it was even things like Star Trek: The Slow Motion Picture, where I loved the Star Trek TV show, and
yeah.
went to see that, and it was a boring movie for a 9-year-old, but it looked extraordinary, and it's never stopped looking extraordinary. And I'll come back to this later. It's no accident that when we did the 2009 Star Trek movie, that was visually one of the biggest influences on it, was the idea of making it feel hugely cinematic, because
Yeah.
as much as Wrath of Khan is the best movie, visually it doesn't hold a candle to Star Trek the motion picture, just with the scale and ambition of the visual shots. And that's because the same people who worked on 2001 worked on that. So it's that, again, it's that widescreen thing
Yeah.
that I think just something I locked onto visually. And again, actually, what I liked about Star Wars was the visuals, not the story. It just it I just didn't buy into the mythology of it the way my friends did. They
But
were
it just looked epic. It looked like
yeah,
an epic space,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I mean? Space war, Star Wars.
yeah. And again,
Um,
it's cinematography is to thank for that, because that's not always something the director controls.
no,
Because whilst they can say I want to have this sort of effect, it's the lighting cameraman that does most of the composing of the shots visually, where they put the cameras, where they put the lights, how it looks on screen. For people like Roger Deakins today, you can spot a Roger Deakins movie just because of, I
yeah.
don't know, have you seen 1917, for instance?
No, I haven't, I must admit.
It's stunning, actually. I mean, apart from the fact that the problems they had to solve to make it feel like from first to last shot, it's a single continuous shot. There's no
Yeah,
cuts except once when the lead character's unconscious, and there it allows them to move, forward in time, day to night. Um, but they built this town which is being bombed, and it's all being shot from the point of view from this soldier's point of view, and it's at night, and the things they had to do with the lighting to get the shadows to work, well, which was swinging these enormous lights over the thing, and all the problems they had to solve to make it seem like a continuous thing. That's as much Roger Deakins as anybody else. And you think,
yeah.
so yeah, cinematography, when we talk about movies, I think less story and more cinematography, that's what influenced me. And Superman the movie was, I think, the first time I was genuinely aware of that.
And I mean, we all grew up. I mean, I can remember running down Edge Hill Road thinking I was running as fast as Superman. We just watched it at the
Yeah.
Catholic club in Harrowby there, and thinking I was Superman running down that hill.
Yeah, well, I think we all wanted to be those characters. We wanted to be Indiana Jones and Luke Skywalker and
Yeah,
Superman. And that's the
the,
thing with kids, isn't it? When you're kids, you just get blown away by these kind of on-screen heroes, because they look amazing, they do amazing things, and it's that hero worship, isn't it? That
that's it. And it's different from what your life is in your drudgery.
Yeah. Well, my response to that was to read a lot of books and get lost in the fantasy novels and science fiction novels and comic books, and just stay in my own head as much as possible, because that was a happier life than the one I was having at home or at
Yeah,
school.
yeah. I was the same, exactly the same, but only it was more horror
Yeah,
with
I
me.
remember that.
Yeah, Matt's still the same. And yeah, sadder that I am. So, the first thing I could find you done movie wise was you done the character designs on the two Marvel animated films,
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
Ultimate Avengers 1 and
Mm.
2, which I thought they were great little films, to
Yeah,
be
they
honest.
weren't bad. The stories were good as well. And the music was good. That was Guy Mitchellmore, son of Cliff Mitchellmore, the newsman.
All
Um,
right, right, yeah, I recognize that name.
yeah. Uh, anyway, yeah, I like those films a lot. And I did the box art for both of them as well, I think. Uh, that rings a bell. Yeah. Yeah, that was before there was even the talk of an Iron Man movie, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you can see some of the story elements from them used in what came.
Yeah. It was definitely a bridge, I think, from taking the Ultimates comic, which was very
Yeah,
much a proof of concept for Kevin Feige and stuff he gave all these directors and writers to look at in terms of trying to create, again, this thing about the believability of the superhero stuff and not going too far into the fantasy stuff. So costuming had to look like it was clothing and reality and all of this
yeah.
sort of stuff. So you build your reality rather than making it look like painted muscles and spandex and things like that. So yeah, there was visually, if not story wise, anyway, the Ultimates is very much a proof of concept, and I think the Ultimate Avengers movies helped cement that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I watched them, but but two really good stories. And at the time, the best animated ones that were out there until DC came along with their animated films,
Yeah,
which were excellent. And the whole linear story that it's been from kind of start to finish when it finished, I think it was last year, year
yeah,
before,
yeah,
with the Flash films, just really, really good. I've got dry mouth with my tablets. Um, so then, 2005, you were hired as a concept artist for Doctor Who, and you helped redesign the TARDIS to that
yeah.
more organic look.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
how did that all come about? Oh, and was there anything in between doing the Ultimate Avengers and kind of Doctor Who
There was talk
TV
about it. I
cinema
did
wise?
yeah, after the Ultimate Avengers thing, I think I designed the Hulk Ultimate Destruction
Or the
video.
game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I did that. And there was a couple of things that came up. And actually about a year before Doctor Who, um, I got approached by a company who was doing or going to be doing a new version of Thunderbirds. Um, and I don't think it ever happened, but I was approached by the production company and actually asked to be the production designer. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't have any experience of running a budget or anything like that. And they said, well, we can do that side of things. What we want is somebody to basically oversee and run all the design aspects of it. And we want it to look like, your stuff. And I was, okay, that's kind of flattering. And they offered a pretty good weekly rate, but I was way behind on Ultimates at that point, and I was always struggling to get stuff done. And I didn't want to leave Ultimates unfinished, so it really was a choice between doing, because that would have been a full-time job. That would have
yeah,
been like 8 months of a year for one series, no guarantee of a second. Um, although it was good money, I wanted to finish Ultimates, so I ended up having to turn it down reluctantly. But I don't, as I say, I don't think the series actually happened in the end. Um, And then when we started hearing about Doctor Who coming back and Russell was announced, and I knew Russell's work, especially from there was a crossover, right? So that the American network did a version of his Queer as Folk,
yes,
and I got hired by, I don't think it was Time magazine, it was another American magazine to do an illustration of the lead characters from Queer as Folk. Um, so that was kind of an issue, like a little crossover
yeah,
thing just before Doctor Who happened, and I think that so I'd seen Russell's stuff from Second Coming, and I loved Second Coming with Eccleston, and so when Russell was announced as bringing Doctor Who back, you thought, oh well, actually, you know, the guy's a serious writer, he does character well, and Second Coming was a big idea, and he could wrestle with that. I mean, I'd never really read any Doctor Who fan fiction beyond the comic book, you know, the classic stuff with Gibbo
Yeah.
and John Wagner and stuff as a kid, and I even did a couple of strips for it, one written by Grant Morrison, early in my career. But I love Doctor
Because
Who.
there was a Death's Head Doctor Who crossover as well, wasn't there?
I don't think I drew that. I think it was Jeff Senior, another
Right.
Carlisle
Yes. The
lad.
Carlisle lad.
Um, but anyway, so then Eccleston was announced, and I thought, wow, that's okay, that's serious because it's Eccleston. This isn't Sylvester McCoy. This is serious shit. And
Yeah.
I had really liked the TV movie because although I thought McGann was terrific. I didn't think the story was great, but I really liked their ambition with the set design because for the first time, Doctor Who had been done with a real budget, and it shows you
Yeah.
what you can do with a budget. And I thought, and that had intrigued me. And following, I would never really probably have thought of putting myself up for it, but following the offer of the job for the Thunderbirds thing, I thought, well, actually, maybe I could do some of this stuff. So I know Russell. I didn't have any contact with him, but I know all the guys at SFX magazine. So I mailed Nick Setchfield, who was the head features writer, and I know he's interviewed Russell loads of times because he'd interviewed Russell about the Doctor Who stuff. So I said, "Oi, can you give me Russell's email? Because I want to email him about Doctor Who." And he said, "Oh, okay, but don't tell him you got it from me." Anyway, so I wrote this long email to Russell. So you won't know who I am, but I've been doing these comics, the Authority. I did the Ultimates. I almost did the Thunderbirds TV show. I did a drawing for Queer as Folk, etc., and all this stuff, but you won't know who I am. And I sent it, went and made a cup of coffee, and I came back in, and just as I came back in, I heard that AOL whoosh noise that an email
Yeah.
arrived, and it was Russell saying, "Of course I fucking know who you are. Do you want a job?" So I just was saying, I would love to, work on the show. And and I think that was true of a lot of people that end up working on the show was it's Doctor Who. They're going to do it with a budget. They're going to kind of take it seriously, at least in terms of production, not necessarily, there wouldn't be comedy in it, but that they were going to really do it properly. And the idea was they wanted to, and back then the big shows are things like Buffy and Firefly in terms of genre stuff that were on, and
Yeah.
their model in terms of we're going to do those 45-minute episodes, we're going to do it with that level of commitment and budget to story and visuals and so on. And but at that point it was literally just the producers, and they just assigned the production designer, Ed Thomas, and he hadn't started yet. So they said, come along to the BBC, we'll have a chat. And I think that afternoon, I remember Russell saying that afternoon, we hadn't had the meeting, but that afternoon was when they were going to go and have a meeting with Billy Piper about maybe doing a screen test. They'd just done one with Rachel Stevens that didn't quite work.
Right.
So, and there was a couple of others as well who've gone on to other things. But so anyway, went along for the meeting. Um, and it was good. We were just batting ideas around for what could or could. I mean, at that point there was, do we really need a TARDIS interior? Would it be better to leave it kind of mysterious? And I was saying, well, the big thing is it's bigger on the inside. You can't just have the voice coming, "Oh my God, it's big in here." It's
Yeah.
you need to show it. And in the script for it, it was mentioned when Rose goes in because Russell had got the screenplay done the screenplay for the first. And I read it and it was terrific. So, but it was just described as this room with a console in the middle that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. No, but maybe, but no, that was it. There was no description in it. And I'd taken along a couple of drawings I'd done literally on a napkin or, that kind of scrap of paper thing. And one was kind of a Jules Verne thing, looked like it was made of raw iron because that kind of like that top
Yeah.
maker particular one with a secondary console room that they used for a while. Um, and the other one was a bit more, that both of them were ambitious in scale, and both of them had the idea that the console room would either be a domed structure or the center of a spherical structure, and that's something that's carried right the way through. Even with the most recent one, Shoot to Get was one is
Yeah.
it's a sphere, because I always thought that it should be not even the same shape as the exterior, because the exterior is only the shape it is because of the 1960s. So the other one I took along was a bit more involved and was influenced by the work of Santiago Calatrava, a Spanish architect who's designed a number of public buildings, railway stations, opera houses, things like that. But he really loves these organic flying buttresses as
Yeah.
well. And I was really into them at the time. So I did another one with the console. I didn't really do the exterior. These were just real scribbles, but these just coming off the console, which was suspended between these Calatrava style buttresses. And that's ultimately the one we went with. But it was gonna be, and I'm sorry I'm waffling here, but I'm on a roll.
No.
It was going to be a lot bigger. It was designed to be 3 stories, much more, at least in scale,
Right.
like Matt Smith's second TARDIS, the one that Capaldi used. So have a mezzanine. It was always intended to have a mezzanine floor, um, and an underspace under the console platform. And when much later, when I was down on one of my visits to the production office in Cardiff, they Ed told me that they'd got the warehouse bought this lease on a warehouse they were going to use as a studio, a big warehouse, and it had the height to do the height, which was about the size of a terraced house,
Yeah.
in terms of height. But then when we went and looked at it, the problem was that the roof was sloping and all the supports were right down the middle of the roof. And so the only way you could there wasn't enough space between them to build the set width-wise. So you had to
Yeah.
move it offside, which meant it had to also reduce in height. So initially and then I went down and like a few weeks later, and then I saw that one of the production assistants was folding up these blueprints for the TARDIS set. And that it was on the floor. The console was on the floor, and I was like, "What? What you're doing is supposed to be suspended. So you go up a ramp to the suspension. It's got to have an underneath." So I got a Sharpie out, and so I started redoing on these vast blueprints, and because I said to Ed, I said it's not right, and he said, "Well, go and sort it out with them. That's fine. Don't worry." So I went with the Sharpie and redrew it on these blueprints. And the next time I saw it, a couple like 6 weeks later, I think it was built by Welsh Opera, because they were used to building these sorts of sets, like suspension
Right.
sets and self suspending sets for opera productions. And their budget, the budget for the TARDIS set was originally planned to be £13,000, and it came in at about 10 times that. Because they weren't planning for anything as elaborate as what we ended up doing. But the BBC went with it, fortunately.
Oh, well.
But they could only build 2/3 of it, so it wasn't a completely enclosed set. It was like a 2/3 with a massive open side. So one of the buttresses was missing, which should have been there, but still with the open side. But they couldn't afford to build the final buttress. So anyway, and the next time I saw it was about 2 days before Chris was supposed to start filming on it, and they hadn't installed the lighting or any of the stuff on the consoles. There's just 2 trestle tables full of junk they'd picked up for the set visit, and there was a bunch of us were just going around gaffer taping things into everything, and we cut a hole in the floor and sunk a nautical compass in there that was just recessed enough that you couldn't trip over it when you're walking around it, and we had to show Eccleston that if you want to go fast, you have to pump the Victorian bike pump, and that makes the TARDIS go faster and stuff like this. But I don't know if they changed it much later, but originally when it was broadcast and on the original DVDs, the first time Rose goes in, you get cut between her going in and Chris on the platform, and there's no lighting behind him. The set isn't lit up. It's just got blanket lighting, but the internal lighting wasn't working. But then when it was working by the time they had to shoot the scenes the following day on there, so that these cross cuts were like a scene with lighting and one without it, and with and without. I think they might have changed that and later kind of fixed it, but and I was really insistent that um we got after Rose goes round, we got but the camera follows her in, so we don't get a cut until she goes inside and sees that the inside is related to the outside, and that
Yeah.
caused huge amounts of problems because they couldn't figure out how to do it, and then the mill did it, worked it out, so they did the cut when the camera was close to the back of her head, and they did a morph effect on her hair, so but then when they finally edited it, they actually cut it in such a way that it isn't continuous anymore, which was the whole point of everybody going to all that trouble. Anyway, that was that was longer than how did you get involved in Doctor Who? Sorry.
No, no, that's fantastic. That's what we kind of want. I like me guests to just tell the story how it is without me having to keep putting in it.
Well, I can
Makes
give
for a
you a
better
seg.
episode.
I can give you a little segue because Russell was standing on looking at the TARDIS set complete, and Russell was like, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, it was the first time I ever walked around on my own drawings before." Which was weird. He said, "Well, what do you want to do next? You know, what's next for you?" I said, "Well, I'd kind of like to do Star Trek if they ever make a Star Trek movie." And they said, "Well, do you think that's going to happen?" I said, "I don't know, but I'd love to work on Star Trek because that was my big passion." Anyway, I remember telling Russell that on the set of on the TARDIS set.
And then obviously a few years later, 3 or 4 years later, well, it'll be a couple of years later, really, when these things get started, Star Trek,
Yeah, though
and you done the design of Spock's ship.
yeah, so that one was that's a much more involved sort of thing. I was supposed to design the entire thing, all of it, the Enterprise, the interiors. Um, so Damon Lindelof, I got to know because he was writing Ultimate Hulk, for Marvel, which
Right.
has been off the Ultimates, and I really liked it. So I wrote him a letter, and I loved Lost as well. So that has started. Just season one was just
Yeah.
out at that point, and really loved that. And of course, he was the showrunner and lead writer on that. Um, uh, so I wrote him like I dropped him an email. I got his email address and just said, "Look, I love this, and that." And he got and stayed in touch, and we just became kind of email buddies. And he knew that I loved Star Trek. So when they began, and which was 2 years before it even went into production, when they began
Yeah.
making it, he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, "What do you mean? Do you want to do it?" He said, "Well, do you want to design the whole thing?" I was like, so he'd come over to London for another thing. That's right. We met up in town for dinner. And that's when he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, because he said, "I'm going to be co-writing and co-producing." In the end, he couldn't get enough time off Lost because the schedule changed so constantly. He stayed on
Right.
as a producer, but he said, "I'll set you up with JJ, and you can have a conversation with him and Brian and Alex." Um, but the first thing they're going to want you to do is Spock's spaceship because it's this big MacGuffin inside the plot. And the plot was very different then. The plot for the movie was different. Nero was still in it, and Spock still time traveled, and Nero is in pursuit. But the whole story behind around it was very different. Uh,
Right.
um, and so I did literally I went back home and I did one quick 10-minute drawing, um, which I called the angel ship. Everybody else calls it the jellyfish, but I called it the angel ship. It was based because whenever I design spaceships, I always think about organic things like insects and sea creatures and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because it just gives you some idea of something that could be um, not. It's more organic. It doesn't feel like it's a box with wheels like a
Yeah.
car
I know
or
what you're saying.
yeah. So so I did this quick drawing, and emailed it over to Damon, and he showed it to JJ, who emailed back and said, "That's the coolest effing ship I've seen." And it so anyway, we had a call a couple of days later with a big conference call with all. I was shitting myself because it's all of them. Um, and we had this conversation about all sorts of stuff about how to modernize the retro designs and make the 60s look more present day. And JJ was talking about the ship being massive. I said it's not massive. Well, it is because it's big, but it said it's actually only about the size of a World War II aircraft carrier in
Yeah.
terms of length. Um, and he was determined to make it bigger. But what we did say in that said, I said what's really interesting. I said when with the shows is that when the ship is always passing left to right in front of the camera like it's sailing on the sea, it doesn't
Yeah.
use the three-dimensionality of space because there is no up or down, so ships would intersect in different ways. I said, but they're never able to, or rarely able to present scale convincingly. So if you look at how the ship passes by the camera, occasionally it will come front to back and the camera passes between the nacelle, warp nacelle, and the saucer of the ship. Like Voyager especially would do shots like that.
Yeah.
Enterprise D would do that. And I said, but the scale's wrong because the way the camera's passing it, either the camera's enormous or the ship isn't. I said, and I described this scene. I said, so you've got to imagine you're sitting in a rowing boat in the middle of the Atlantic, and you can just see how big the Atlantic is, and an aircraft carrier comes past you close enough for you to touch. Your perspective is just this wall of metal and a porthole and so on. And gradually the ship then moves past you and recedes into the distance. And then on the horizon, you can see just how small the ship is compared with the vastness of space. But you have a personal human's perspective on the scale of the ship.
Yeah.
I said, then the Narada's going to appear and dwarf the ship. All right, what's the opening shot of the movie?
Just exactly what you've
Right,
described.
which I did. That was not in the script. I was just talking about that as wave scale. So when I saw the movie much later, because I hadn't had contact with it for a while, I was watching it out and I was like, that's my shot. And I was going through it again. I did that was my I described that was that. Hang on a minute. How did this stuff end up in there? But it all that foundational stuff I talked over with JJ. Um, it just all ended up in there. As Damon said, every single idea you had is in the film, every single one of them, from stories through to visuals, and even if you don't like it, I'm the one responsible for the view screen being a window. Um, but I said that was useful. I said from a movie point of view because you'll see the ship's saucer in front of it. You can never show that. They never showed the back of the Enterprise D when they're in
No.
the conference room. It's just space. So where's the back of the ship gone? Um, so I always thought that you should be able to see the ship through the windows, which I know is something else that's carried on since those movies. Um, but that was the problem solved for when you're on the bridge, being able to see through the view screen that there is the saucer section in front of you. And again, that just helps with scale and perspective.
And you never got a credit, which is a bit of a
No,
shitter.
well, there's two reasons for that. One is we kind of forgot about it when we did the contracts. And secondly, so there was when those meetings and conversations happened, the film was due to start production quite quickly, and then Paramount wavered on giving it the green light, and it was ended up being almost 2 years between those early conversations and the film going
Yeah.
into production. And actually, what was also so we Joe and I were talking about having another baby, and she's like, "But what if you have to go over, like to LA for
Yeah.
3 months? That could happen." I said, "Yeah, but the chances of it coinciding are really rare. And besides which, it may not happen anyway because Paramount, there was a point where it just wasn't going to happen, and Paramount were going to shut it down and maybe just go back to a TV show or something, and nobody would really knew." And so I said the chances of it coinciding um, were remote. And I was wrong about that because it was literally the day Ted was born. I got a phone call to say we've got the green light. I was like, the thing is, so Scott Shambliss had been hired as production designer because he'd worked with JJ on all the TV shows as well, like Alias and Lost
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um, but Hollywood's as well as a place of creative pursuit, is also there's a lot of office politics and people fighting for their own spots, especially when there's a lot of money on the table and so on. But so my first conversation with him was he phoned me and said, JJ's told me I have to work with you. And I thought, well,
Oh,
that's not going to go well. And he didn't. He tried to sideline me in every opportunity. Um,
oh, what a knob.
yeah, that was one of the words I used too. Um, so, but then when that happened, we got the green light, and I couldn't come. I just said, well, I can't come out. I can't. Um, there was a agreement to what Hollywood refers to as off the lot, which means I could work
Yeah,
remotely. It doesn't work quite didn't work quite as well then as it does now. Um, but I'd still had lots of foundational conversations with JJ about styling and modernizing and I designed like an engine room as well, which ultimately became the red matter room on Spock's ship.
right. Yeah.
But that's what I wanted the Enterprise engine room to look like on a bigger scale. Um, but I just got sidelined, and and Scott kept keeping me off showing me anything. I didn't see what anybody else was doing. I know John Eves. I knew John Eves was working on the Enterprise, which again was what I was supposed to be working on. And Scott just told me, he said, "Look, your ship, Spock's ship, is not going to look like that. It's going to get completely changed. John Eves is redesigning it completely. Not John Eves. It wasn't John Eves. It was oh, wait, hang on a minute. I'll have to look him up. Bear with. Um, where's my Star Wars, Star Trek? Oh, there we go.
Got it.
Yeah. Ryan Church.
Right.
So Ryan Church, he's done a lot. I mean, I knew his work. I was very familiar with it. It's very good. Um, but I was told that the ship was just going to undergo all these different changes and so on, and so not to expect it. And that my contract ran out, and that was it until and I was invited to the LA premiere, but I didn't want to go. I think I was feeling a bit kind of. I mean, I wasn't. I could have gone and talked to Damon about this stuff, but that didn't feel to me like it was Damon's problem, and
No.
not a problem I think I wanted him to solve. It was office politics, and in the end, I was distant, and they had to move a movie on, and it was a good opportunity for Scott to fully sideline me, and he did. So fair enough. I
Ah,
don't, I
what
can
an
spe-
absolute bell end. That's not a nice thing to happen,
but
especially when you
that's
put so much effort and work into it.
well, it's just how that sometimes just how that shit works.
And it was something you always wanted to do.
Yeah, but well, I still got to do it, I suppose, and uh, but the surprise was when I went to see the movie. I mean, my friend Andrew, who works with me as Inca on my Redcoat book, amongst other things, because he did lots of books with me. But he was sharing a studio with me whilst I was doing all the Star Trek stuff. So he's aware of all the conversations because he heard
Yeah.
them, and we both went to watch Star Trek in our local cinema, and we both go, but that was you. That was yeah, it was. And the surprise was when Spock's spaceship showed up, it was exactly like my original design. Nothing had changed at all. And in this book, which is all about the designing the Kelvin timeline and
Yeah.
so on, there's loads of attempts to redesign the ship and Spock's spaceship. It's just undergoes so many different changes. And then at some point, JJ just said, "What are you doing? It's supposed to look like that." And he wanted it to look like the original one. And Scott kind of glosses over that in his like, yeah, and JJ just wanted to go back to the original look. But they tried really hard to change it, but it stayed, it was Teflon coated. It stayed exactly like it was supposed to look all the way through. My friend Neil, even back then, way back when, had done because he really loved the design, he'd built a 3D model of it and animated
Right.
it with all the rotational stuff that I wanted on it. Um, and ILM apparently really loved the fact that it had moving parts, which is something unusual for Star Trek, other than Voyager. and we're influenced by that to the point where if you look really carefully, when Enterprise goes to warp, the deflector dish comes forward very slightly. It's just a really slight thing, but
Right. Oh,
it's just their little nod to that, to Spock's ship, um, and
moving parts.
yeah, moving parts.
Brilliant. So, what did you do after anything else after Star Trek?
I think I actually had a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about that. My then agent was saying, look, you know, if you want to leave comics, we can start a thing where we'll set you up as a consultant, and you know, you can come in and have meetings and creative meetings, and we can use this stuff. And it's really said, you know, come out for a few months, and you know, we'll just put you around in all the right meetings, all the right places.
Yeah.
It said at some point you're either going to end up running something or directing something, and I thought about that, and I think the autistic side of me was, I can't do that. I can't leave. I can't. And you know, we had young children. You
Yeah.
know, by that time it was four boys, um, and the autistic side of me is like, I can't think of anything worse than going to parties and meetings all the time to try and sell myself and my ideas. It just didn't feel like something I wanted to do. So I thought, you know, if something comes up naturally with people I know, that's different. Um,
Yeah.
and so I kind of, there were a few times I'd come close to putting something together of my own that I was going to either write or produce, or, and it just, again, it's all that stuff of having to go in and have all those meetings, and at the end of the day, I much prefer sitting in my own little room telling stories, or working with a friend, or it just, I don't think I was built for that kind of, you know, bullshitting process of going out and trying to uh so there was lots of things that came close in one way or another, including actually a Fantastic Four film. Matthew Vaughn was possibly going to was talking about doing it, and I wrote a treatment for that, which started with them already several years into being the Fantastic Four, 4 years in. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Not that I don't think
Yeah.
anybody saw this, because I never sent it because Matthew pulled out, and so I never actually completed it. But again, Sue was going to be pregnant, and Galactus was going to be in it, so there were lots of similarities. It's funny watching the recent one, because it was like, yeah, I feel a bit vindicated, because some of this, in terms of approach and the design, the 60s modernized design again, them already being a family and well
Yeah.
established in their world and so on. You know, I just seemed like to me always the most sensible way of starting it, because I think people just don't give a shit about origin stories anymore.
No, that's it. People are sick of origin stories, and
Spider-Man didn't
especially,
have one, you know, Fantastic Four
yeah,
hasn't had one, Superman hasn't had one. And that
no,
thing I liked the best about Superman movie was the lack of origin story. They still touched on it, but it wasn't the plot, you know.
no.
Again,
And I thought Nicholas Holt's Lex was scene chewingly
yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, again, like, I think, although I don't particularly, no, like, that's not the wrong word. I mean, I don't think the Dark Knight is as good as I've been told it is, story wise, but I can't fault Heath Ledger's performance, which is, you know,
No, the Joker was a good
yeah.
performance.
So again, Nicholas Hoult, definitely the best Lex Luthor since Smallville.
Mm.
Um, so one of three really great Lex Luthors.
No, the Smallville guy was
Michael
really good.
Rosenbaum, yeah.
Yes, I watch his podcast now and again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did one with Nicholas Hoult, actually, if you haven't watched that.
I've watched bits of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
which was
actually thought
quite good.
I thought the casting in Superman was terrific, genuinely. Um,
And he did have that kind of Christopher Reeve quality, and the way they used the music was quite good.
yeah, I don't think the score was individual enough, because the only things that I remember are the bits where they used John Williams stuff. The rest of
Yeah,
it just didn't really. But then I think even by his own admission, James Gunn doesn't really do soundtracks. He does song scores. He doesn't really
Yeah, he
work
like
with
he
music.
prefers
Yeah,
yeah, a music soundtrack
yeah,
over a score soundtrack.
yeah. Which is, fine. There's many ways to skin a cat.
I
Um,
mean, it's done quite well with the Guardians of the Galaxy ones because I've got them all. Great soundtracks, and I've played them on my radio show quite often.
okay, yeah. So yeah, then after, so if I'm just going to jump ahead, what else did I do? The next thing that came up was I'd got to know this guy called Steve Asbell, who was an executive at Fox and a comic fan too, and um, he asked me if I could do a few passes at some costumes for the Wolverine movie.
All
Um,
right.
um, just because he wasn't convinced that they were moving, he said, quite in the right direction. So I just did some passes at some of the costuming just as an option because then he
Yeah.
had some material which was. So then he came up and he said, we're just prepping or about to start prepping a Fantastic Four relaunch with we got Josh Trank, and I loved Chronicle. I'd seen Chronicle. I really thought it was a terrific.
Chronicles, excellent film.
Um, and they hadn't got a production designer at that point. They had got a partially completed screenplay, which I read, and I really loved the tone of it. It was like even though again it was an origin story, it was based much more on the Ultimate FF, and
Right.
they were going to be much younger, Wonder Kids rather than grown up. So that was a choice I couldn't persuade them not to follow. They wanted to do that, but the tone of the screenplay was just like a classic Spielberg movie, like Goonies or
Right.
T. It was just full of, but the action was very badly handled. So I started working on some of that stuff as well as some designs for it. Um, but there was a point we had I got on really well with Josh, who was such a terrific kind of creative individual. Um, but we ended up with after months of work, and I had the same kind of conversation. So the guy, his name will come back to me because he's currently designing all the Avatar movies, but he got hired as production designer, and he had the same sort of reaction. I've been told I have to work with you. I thought, fuck, I'm not doing this again. So I said, look,
Uh,
let's just have a conversation. So we got on a Zoom, and I said, look, Ben, I don't want your job. That's not what I'm here for. I'm a consultant. I'm a resource all of you can use because I know the material. I'm very creative. I do visual storytelling. I can work in everything, any aspect of
yeah.
this stuff and work as a resource because I don't want, I've got a job of my own on this and I've been hired by Fox, not by you. So I'm not out your art department. You don't just use me as a resource, consult as needed. Let's just have conversations and let's see what comes of it. It could be useful. So that worked out really well. And, we had a lot of back and forth about stuff. Meanwhile, I was talking with Josh and the writer about the action stuff, and how to work that up and make. But and at one point we had a really, I think, terrific movie. And there's going to be a limit to what I can and can't say about some of this stuff because I think my
I
end.
think there's been a documentary made about it also.
Well, there's a lot of stuff, yeah, I know about that I'm probably not allowed to
Yeah,
talk about. But there was
fair
a point.
dues.
There was a point. So we had the Mole Man. It had, and the main villain was Annihilus, and he was going to be pulling the Earth into the negative zone, and it was going to be
Right.
really hugely destructive. And um, but the negative Annihilus, the design. So I designed Annihilus, I designed this huge portal. There was that was an interest in the negative zone. There's some really lovely touches in it as well. We had such as they needed. Victor was still on the group at that point because they were university friends, him and Reed. So that was their take on it. But they needed to have some sort of travel pod to go through the negative zone. And they stole one of the Apollo modules from the Smithsonian and put that on the gimbal to go through. So they were going to be a bit of just a nod to the right stuff in
Yeah.
there. And Johnny was supposed to be able to fly it, and we and I came up with this scene where he's like, I can't understand all of this technology, Reed, and so Reed, in one of those kind of snap cut montage scenes, takes all this complicated machinery and gradually reduces it to something the size of a game controller that Johnny can then use to fly.
Yeah.
So there was little touches like that so but the designing all that stuff, Annihilus, I did loads of storyboarding on various scenes, including some action scenes, designed some passes at Ben, who was, as he should be, human sized and not sized. And then at one point they had to then go and do a presentation. I wasn't there for this. I wasn't over there for that, but they had to do a presentation for Emma Watts, who was head of the studio at the time. And she'd be the one that basically greenlit it and gave the go ahead to have the full budget. And then Josh called me afterwards. He said, "We're fucked." She said, she looked at it, she says, "That's a Marvel movie. I don't want a Marvel movie. I want a Fox movie." And you think, what this, I mean, it was a great script at that point. I think it would have been the equal of any of the Marvel movies, what we had then, but it completely crushed Josh because he didn't know what to do next. So he had to go away for 6 months to he had 6 months to kind of rethink it all. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because there were some changes that happened in Josh's life, and it began a process that ultimately ended up in a nervous breakdown. I know there's been a lot of negative stuff said about what happened around Josh in those times, but it really wasn't of his making. He just wasn't very well, and things had happened in his life. It's not my place to talk about. That's his stuff to talk about. But he wasn't the bad guy in that at all. It was just a series of unfortunate things, and mental health is what it is.
It is, and to be honest, a lot of our generation suffer and don't say a thing.
And I think the support mechanism around him just Steve aside, Steve Asbell's a terrific chap, but there was help available that Josh couldn't or didn't use, but ultimately he was forced to step away when the movie was incomplete. And I'd come back on it before that. Before they started shooting, they were just starting to build sets and stuff, and I'd gone over to Atlanta because they hadn't got a final act. And Simon Kinberg, I think, was doing the final pass at the screenplay at that point. And then I sat and wrote the whole final act, all the action stuff for that, which was what was going to be used. There's only hints of it still left in the movie, but so it was a bit of an abortive experience, and and I didn't put my name on it because I think nothing that really of what I'd contributed had remained in the movie anyway. So I was like, I don't want my name on it because I didn't really do anything on this. I worked on that earlier version that got rejected, and although I'd done this, the thing for the final act, that really wasn't what ultimately ended up in the film. I just didn't really feel like I wanted the credit, and the whole thing was really just unfortunate for everybody, not least of which was Josh, I think, unfortunately. But and then Steve Asbell has ended up becoming the head of Fox Studios. We almost did a lot of it because so he calls me. He said, this is like my final movie story. So before Disney bought Fox, Steve had called. Steve was still a senior executive, and he'd said, "Look, I know the Fantastic Four stuff didn't work out well, but I know you guys have." Well, he's talking about me and oh God, why is me names today? And I actually know this guy really well. I can't get his name out of my head. Bloody hell! Hang on a minute. I'm gonna have to look. It's because I'm tired. No, I need to find out what this guy is.
Well, you said you've been working non-stop with Ghost Machine stuff, so I know, and I know you've squeezed me in for an interview, for a chat, should I say?
Yeah, let me just find uh Iron Man.
And I'm always very happy.
Um oh God, I actually even got an email from him like 3 weeks ago. I've got to respond. Anyway, this person whose name I can't bloody remember, who I actually know really well. It's because I'm
What's
tired.
he done? What's he
Oh God,
done?
he's produced his first job producing was Iron Man. He was the line producer on Iron Man, but he did the Avengers movies, Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland. Um, hang on a minute, let me look.
I'm gonna have a quick glimpse.
So yeah, as you know, I'm really good friends with Joss
Yeah.
Whedon, and he introduced me to him. And we remained in touch because he's a comic fan, and I like his
Which
work.
Spider-Man movies did
He
he
also
have
he just
produced?
oh he just produced the his most recent big thing was the uh Dungeons and Dragons movie. I'm going to kick myself in a minute, and if he watches this, he's going to tease me for. Uh,
I'm just gonna.
hang on, I'm just looking. You can cut all this shit out, right?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Um, John Francis, no, it won't be John Francis Daly. Brian Goldner,
Jeremy
Jonathan
Latcham.
Goldstein.
No, Jeremy
Yeah,
Latcham. So
there we go.
anyway, so Jeremy knew I had some ideas. Steve knew I had some ideas, and Jeremy was like, so Steve had basically said, "Why don't you two go away and come up with some stuff, and we'll make movies together." So I was like, "Finally, this is what I wanted." This is so what I'm saying before is like if people you know kind of do it, it's not that same. So I knew Jeremy
No,
really well, like Jeremy knew Steve really well. So we thought, we could do something big budget ideas, and we certainly had plenty. My ones are now part of Ghost Machine, but because that didn't happen. So what then happened was that Emma Watts left. Emma Watts stepped down from being head of the studio. And Steve was like, okay, well, we can't probably get any of this stuff off the ground till we've got a studio head. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens because whoever gets in might end up not wanting this sort of material. So we have to just hang fire for a few more. Anyway, it took weeks and weeks and weeks, like before they announced a new studio head. And it was Steve. And Steve was like, we're on, boys.
got
He said, we're up.
your
And
inside
then
man.
literally 3 weeks later, like they announced the merger with Disney, said, hang fire, boys, because we don't know what Disney are going to want or whether I'll
Yeah,
still be the head of the studio when we get in or anything like that. Um, and so then that took a long time, the best part of a year for all of that dust to settle. And by this point, it was 2020, and I'm sure you can guess what happened next.
yeah.
So Steve was like,
COVID.
we're all right, we're off. And then literally COVID happened like a month later. And so Jeremy, who was under contract with Fox at the time, left ultimately to go and make what became Dungeons and Dragons. Um, and we kept in touch and we post all this stuff. And once COVID had passed, and then there was the writers' strikes and all of this. So
Yeah,
and then Ghost Machine happened, and just as everything was kind of back on, Jeremy and Steve were like, should we just try doing this again? I said, well, I've just started this new thing with Ghost Machine, and I'm putting all my ideas into that because, the whole thing with the company is it's an IP company, and yes, we're all going to make some terrific comics, but ultimately we're going to turn these things into film and TV
yeah,
shows and video games and toy lines and all of this sort of stuff. That's the long-term plan. We'll always make great comics, but they're the foundational level of our business. But ultimately, so all of that's in progress, and we can have talk about more of that stuff in due course when it and as it happens.
yes. We'll definitely will have to. So last thing then. Favorite films.
Do you know, everybody's I ask me, what's your favorite this, what's your favorite that? It varies because it depends on what mood I'm in. I can it's lists, like I don't have a single favorite, but and they change depending on what I can
Mm.
remember from week to week because I'm ancient and I've got a shit memory, as I've just proven.
And I'm the same. So yeah,
Superman the movie, obviously. Indiana Jones again. I mean, anything with a John Williams score was always a favorite movie because I loved music as much as I loved visuals, and John Williams has written the soundtrack to my entire life.
yeah. Bit of
Um,
ET.
Yeah, but anytime you knew anytime Spielberg was making a movie, you knew it was going to be good on some level. The music would always be terrific. The visuals would be always terrific. There'd be a solid story,
Yeah.
and it would always look extraordinary. So any Spielberg movie was always a favorite. The list is so long because I just love film, and that even a movie I'm not overly keen on, you always try to find something that you like in it.
Yeah.
One of my boys, Ollie, is he goes to see absolutely everything that comes out. Doesn't care what it is. He will see every single movie that's released because he just loves films.
Film.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a romance or a war film or anything. Again, I mentioned it earlier, 1917, I think is a breathtaking cinematic achievement.
Yeah.
I think I saw that so many times at cinema. Dune, the two Dune movies, Denis Villeneuve. I think again, like Spielberg, the man hasn't made a bad film. It's just visually
Mm.
extraordinary. Blade Runner 2049 was a stunning looking movie. Arrival is one of my favorite films. I think story wise and visually, Arrival I think is an extraordinarily good movie. Oh God, I should hang on. I should actually, if I booted up my 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 movie list on Apple, it would give you
IMDb. Oh,
yeah, but just it's just there's so many of them, and to be honest,
yeah.
I love the Marvel movies. I thought Winter Soldier was fantastic. It's probably still my favorite
Excellent.
Marvel movie.
What did you think of Thunderbolts?
I really liked it. I mean, anytime you can do
Same
a
here.
film about positive mental health, and make that the key theme of your film, I'm all up for that. As speaking to somebody with who's on the autistic spectrum with two autistic kids, and I've got bipolar disorder and suffered from depression over the years. Anytime you can make that
Yeah.
like the key theme of your film, including the bad guy, it's I think that was amazing. I just really liked it. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah. No, it was excellent film. Shame it didn't do the business at the box office.
I know.
And
Well, I'm one of the few people who really loved Eternals, so
I enjoyed Eternals as well. I've not, to be fair, I've not seen a bad Marvel movie. I've enjoyed them all at some degree.
Shang-Chi was terrific. One of the
Yeah.
again, I mean, like Fantastic Four, though, it had no real connection to the larger Marvel universe. It was just its
No.
own thing. But Shang-Chi was terrific start to finish.
And no spoilers, but what an end credit scene.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? I thought Fantastic Four had the feels. The lassie who played Sue Storm was excellent.
Yeah, Victoria, Vanessa Kirby. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen her in lots of other stuff. I mean, I remember the first time I really got to remember her as an actress was when she played Princess Margaret in the first two seasons of The Crown.
Right.
And I thought she was the best thing in it. She just had this kind of life to her that was extraordinary. Well, I suppose the character had compared with the Queen and Prince Philip, who were very kind of uptight, but she was
Yeah.
as she was just terrific in it. So she had stardom written all over her.
Never watched The Crown, but first thing I saw her in was Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she's been
Fantastic.
in like
The Fast and Furious spin-off.
yeah. I like that movie. I didn't like the Fast and Furious, but I actually liked that movie.
Yeah. Idris Elba's quite funny in it. I'm the Black Superman, and he's
Yeah.
doing
I
all
mean, the
the
Fast and the Furious films, my boys always loved them, and I watched them like with first of all, it's like, why am I watching car racing? And then it became, how is this even physically possible by any level of physics? Pulling a helicopter is lifting a car up, and the car just has to drive faster to pull it back down. Just press the accelerator, and it suddenly makes the car heavier. I mean, there's just ludicrous amounts of gravity
oh,
defying.
they're just silly, but
Yeah,
it's the stunt work you're looking at because
yeah.
it's not CGI. A lot of it's not CGI.
No, and
It's actual car stunt work.
you're certainly not watching it for the stories.
No, definitely not. All the acting.
Yeah,
But you're just watching it for the spectacle.
yeah, yeah.
And they do bring that. And the final one's coming up, isn't it?
So I hear
This
in
next
two
one's
parts, isn't
supposedly the
it?
final one.
Isn't it in two parts though?
The part one's already been released.
Oh, has it? Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the second part. I'm looking forward to Secret Wars, Doom and Doomsday. If they're going with God Emperor Doom version and all that kind of thing,
Yeah,
and the
I mean, I haven't. Yeah,
1662 kind of vibe.
yeah, and there's it's definitely sort of I think built at least the premise of Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars stories,
Yeah.
with the incursion stuff. I'll go and see it, I'll because I go to see all of them. I just hope they're good.
Have you seen 28 years later yet?
I haven't seen any of those movies actually, to be
Right.
honest.
Well, I just watched the latest one last night, and to say it jumped the shark,
Okay, all right.
it completely did
The reviews seem to be
compared to
quite
the
kind
original.
about it. I haven't seen the first one, but if there, I don't know how many of them there are, but I haven't seen any of them because I was not a big zombie movie fan. It has to be said. Um,
They're not zombies.
oh,
That's the thing.
okay,
They aren't zombies.
okay,
They're infected with a rage virus.
okay. That's how they're getting around it, is it?
Yeah, they're not yeah, they're not zombies. It's a rage virus. Um, and they don't eat. Well, they do, but they're more about just beating the crap out of folk.
Okay. Maybe I should watch
You
the
know what I
original
mean?
one.
So, but
I would say I haven't seen any of those. Mind you, I haven't seen the Avatar movies either.
no, I've seen the first Avatar. I've not watched the new one. I thought they just look ridiculous to me.
Well, I haven't seen the first one.
Um,
I haven't seen Titanic either. That's another one of the ones.
oh,
Because
terrible.
I mean, I really like Cameron's early stuff. Obviously, Aliens was extraordinary. I really loved Abyss, though I think the emotional climax came about two-thirds into the movie. When
Yeah,
Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's character is revived by Ed Harris.
yeah,
That's the emotional end of the movie. After that, it's just spectacle. It just doesn't matter anymore because you've peaked. Um, which is an interesting storytelling thing. It's a good thing to remember is where one of the things we learn, and I'll try to remember when we're doing kind of big action stuff in visual media, is that your emotional climaxes and your action climaxes should be simultaneous. One should be driving the other.
yeah,
It shouldn't be that you have a big emotional climax and then you have the action, because that makes it pointless. It's just empty. So you have to make people care about what they're seeing, and so you try to work your story so that these things happen together. And that was one of those things where I think a rare misstep story-wise for Cameron, because Terminator 2 and Aliens were terrific, but
yes.
Abyss was
Completely agree with you.
Abyss was otherwise brilliant, actually. But it was just that by that point, after you've reached that emotional climax, what's left to care about?
Yeah. And I'd love to see Spielberg go back to his kind of 70s, 80s kind of filmmaking
Yeah, one of them is
as well.
it's a new alien storyline movie, which he says caps off his trilogy of alien movies, um, which
All
I
right,
think
excellent.
Close Encounters, ET, and this one. I don't think he's counting War of the Worlds as part of it because that's an adaptation.
No,
But this is
yeah.
another alien movie, which I think he says is much more back to his kind of 80s style of film. So
Because
that
originally, E.T. was going to be a sequel to Close Encounters called Night Skies, wasn't it? And it was going to
was
be a
it. Was
lot
it?
darker.
Oh, was it? Okay, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it was connected.
Yeah, I think it maybe wasn't a sequel. I may be brain just thinking that up, but um, I'm sure it was. I might be wrong on that.
I
But
can
yeah, it was
imagine
going to
that.
be
I can
called
see
Night
how the big
Skies.
connect. It would be easy to imagine the connective tissue because the aliens come back, one of them gets left behind, and
Yeah,
you could easily see that as a conceptual sequel to how Close Encounters gave rise to or gave birth to ET, at least in Spielberg's mind, even if it was never
yeah.
intentionally a sequel. You can just see how one would.
Super 8. Now that's very Spielbergy. J.J.
Yeah,
Abrams one, Super 8.
yeah, I know. Well, Abrams is
It's
massively
very,
influenced by Spielberg.
yeah, true, true. But no, it would nice to see Spielberg back on top.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which would be nice because I don't think he's made a knockout film for a long time,
None of his movies are
at
bad
least
though.
since the 90s.
Well, yeah,
No, they're
but
not bad, but they're not rewatchable like the Indiana Jones films, E.T., um, all them film, and even all the films he was associated with, like Goonies and stuff like that,
yeah, that's true. You know, Goonies.
Gremlins.
I see Goonies again. Goonies was produced by Spielberg and directed by Dick Donner. I mean, it's like,
That's it.
yeah.
I've got the extended version with the octopus scene.
Oh, right. I haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, with no, which is quite nice to see, and I wish it kind of been kept in. Great film. They're supposedly doing a sequel to it, a legacy
Oh,
sequel.
yeah, I've heard that for 20 years.
Yeah, so we'll see what that's like. But Corey Feldman's kind of lost the plot, so it'll be
Again,
interesting to
yeah.
see what that's like. Is there anything coming up that you're looking forward to seeing?
Oh, good question. Hmm. Can't think off the top of my head.
No, I'm the same. I'm just thinking there, and it's like there's nothing like we were saying years ago that you'd see the trailer and you go, "Ooh,
Yeah.
weapons, that looks good
I mean, the
or
TV shows,
interesting."
there's a lot of good TV shows. Again, now we've seen this golden age of television where TV shows
Yeah.
are rivaling movies for visuals. I mean, shows like Foundation on Apple just look breathtaking. So do the new Star Trek shows. And I'm a huge Star Trek fan, as you know.
Strange New Worlds is excellent.
Absolutely love it. I'm just waiting for episode 4 to drop.
I'm
Uh,
waiting till they've all dropped. I've got Paramount Plus. I'm waiting for them all to drop,
yeah, my
and
boys are
then
doing that.
I'll watch them.
I can't wait.
I'm
Look
currently
back in.
watching. Sorry, go on.
I was saying back in the day when we didn't get the broadcasts over here early enough because they're on TV. So when they come out and the Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and Voyager come out on
Yeah.
video first, I would if it was a choice between buying food that night and a Star Trek video, I'd buy the Star Trek video.
Oh man, we've all been there. Definitely all been there, especially in the 90s when I was
I
living on
know
my
I had
own.
every single episode on these on these videos. I mean, I had shelf upon shelf upon shelf of Star Trek videos. But I just loved it. It's just something about it. Just it's a fantasy world I wanted to live in. I think, like I said, was it goes back to
Yeah.
those teen years of diving into fantasy novels and wanting to live in those worlds because I wasn't happy with the one I lived
Mm.
in. And it's the same with Star Trek. That's just the place I would. There's actually a thing down here in London called Bridge Commander, and it's down by Vauxhall, literally opposite the MI6 building. And it's one of those sort of escape room stroke live action role playing thing. And it's
Right.
basically you get to be on it's not Star Trek, but it's as close to Star Trek as you can look. You should look it up. It looks interesting. But you basically all take all these roles on the bridge of a spaceship and run these mission scenarios, and you have to solve all the
Yeah.
problems. And I just want to do it so I can be the captain. But although we could do it and take all the boys and some friends, they won't give me the kind of respect Picard has earned. So they'll just argue with me the whole bloody time. So it'll just end up being a shouting match with me stabbing my friends. Well, you just bloody do what you're told. So
That's it.
I don't think that's really the spirit of Star Trek, is it?
No, no, that's brilliant. But you should do it. Get it done. It'll be good crack. So I think we've kind of covered everything. And as always, stick around after we sign out and I'll have a quick natter with you.
Yeah, okay.
But no, thank you for being here, Brian.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
It's always, yeah, just nice to catch up. As it's, a long friendship of since
Well,
about
since
1988.
teenagers, I know we're teenagers.
Yeah, it was 1988. I moved to Bowman Street.
Yeah, that's right.
So it'll be roughly about then when I got told the bloke who lives a couple of doors down, right, draws comics. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And then I used to come and pester you.
No, you were never a pest. It was nice to have somebody close to my own age living nearby that was into the same stuff.
Well, that's it. And you got the odd pirate video offers, which was
That's
always
true.
handy.
Lots of those.
But no, thank you for being here, Brian. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour having you on.
My
As
pleasure,
always,
Paul. Genuinely a pleasure.
Excellent. So it's bye from me, and it's bye from Brian, and we'll speak to you in the next episode coming next week because I'm starting to get back up again. So
Nice.
speak to you all soon.
Hi, I'm Steve Kostansky, director of Frankie Frico, Psycho Gorman, and co-director of The Void, here to tell you to check out the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club. Check out their Facebook page and their YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe and do all that good stuff. While you're at it, check out The Instructor. Pretty fun movie. Bye.